welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. There are a lot of challenges to raising high-yielding soybeans. One of them is iron deficiency chlorosis. We'll show you how to eliminate this problem on your farm.
We've gotten a lot of calls and really questions on email, a number of different forms of media in terms of how do I handle it if I'm going to take pasture ground or CRP ground or even prevent plant acres and put those back into production, and not just put them into production, but raise a great crop this coming year. We're going to talk about that on today's show.
Well, our weed of the week is definitely something that can take away from a great crop. It's an important one to control, and we'll show you how later in the program. But first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
During our Farm Basics time today, we're going to talk about later season application of nitrogen in wheat through the use of what we call stream bars.
You know, one of the questions with wheat every year is, what can I do to improve my protein levels in my wheat? In many areas, there's a premium paid for higher protein wheat compared to just average protein wheat. And so farmers, if there's a premium out there where they can get a little bit more money per bushel of grain, they certainly want to achieve that, and they want to keep whoever's going to be the end user of that wheat happy. So raising higher protein wheat is one of the reasons farmers are looking for ways to get nutrients like nitrogen put on later in the season.
With nitrogen, one of the biggest challenges is it's not just going to stay in soil. A lot of times that will move through the soil profile and it will get out of the root zone after big rains. And it depends on the soil type and a lot of different conditions, how much rainfall you have. But one of the considerations for farmers is they're looking at how much can my soil hold in the beginning. So they look at cation exchange capacity, multiply their number times 10. That tells them roughly how much nitrogen their soil can hold at any one time. Well, the problem is if you're going for a big time wheat yield, you just can't hold all that nitrogen in most soils. So guys are split applying the nitrogen. They put some out early and then they come back with some later on. Certainly a lot of products get sprayed right over the top of crops. But the trouble is if you spray a lot of liquid nitrogen right over the top of the crop, it will burn the crop. So what farmers have done to reduce the burn is put on these stream bars on their sprayers, so it will be a little stream of nitrogen that falls all the way down to the ground, minimizing leaf burn, yet maximizing yield.
A lot of the nitrogen is going to be taken up through the root system anyway, so if we can get that nitrogen down to the ground, then our roots can start pulling that nitrogen up and feeding that crop. And getting it through that canopy is really a big deal too. Brian talks about how nitrogen used to get sprayed over the top, and still there's some applications where it will get sprayed over the top. The challenge now is many farmers say, well, hey, I also need to get some weed control, or I need some disease control, or some insect control too. And you start mixing those things with a liquid nitrogen product, and sure, you can dilute that nitrogen down, mixing a bunch of water with it or something like that so the droplets aren't quite so concentrated. But when you start mixing it with another product out there, maybe it's a weed killer or one of the other things that I just listed, you're going to add so much burn to that. And once you burn those leaves on wheat, that's where we're taking in the sunlight energy. That's where we're doing all this photosynthesis to try to grow a bigger crop. And we don't want to do anything to destroy our leaves on our wheat plants. That's a big, big deal.
So that's why many of the high yield farmers that we work with around the world have put these stream bars on their equipment so they can apply nitrogen a little bit later in the season without burning a whole bunch of the wheat. And not only are they gaining higher yield, they're getting higher protein levels as well.
Oh, hey, one other thing, Brian, when we talk about stream bars, how are guys going to get out in the field? They need to have tram lines too. That really helps when you leave dedicated tracks for those wheels to run. So we can run a sprayer through that's going to be applying this nitrogen really at any point during the season without running over crop and limiting our yield.
Well, one of the reasons why a farmer might be out there with this sprayer, in addition to stream barring nitrogen, is to control weeds like our weed of the week. We'll tell you how to stop this tough one for wheat farmers and all farmers coming up later in the show.
What's next in weed control technology? Roundup Ready 2 Extend soybeans will provide tolerance to dicamba and glyphosate and will be built on the Genuity Roundup Ready to Yield trait. See them in action at extendfollowafield.com.
Working in agriculture over the past 3 decades, I saw a need for an accurate way to apply dry product to seed. That's where our changing times applicators come in. The CT applicator brush sifts powder into small particles, resulting in proper distribution. Quantities can be adjusted by the speed of the brush rotation. This allows for even and accurate distribution of product. Application at the time of planting can be used with any seed delivery system and saves farmers time, labor, and money. Remember, CT applicators for the changing times.
Dirty work pays. That is if your dirty work includes a Soil Max Gold Digger tile plow. Soil Max tile plows feature zero deflection technology. With the only tile plow factory paired with Ag Leader's IntelliSlope control system, you eliminate the need for grade calculations and lasers. So make your next investment in a Soil Max Gold Digger. Better yield, longer planting and harvest windows, better water management is all yours with Soil Max. Visit soilmax.com.
Wake up, breakfast is served. Your roots crave P. Most of your applied P gets tied up in the soil, a natural phenomenon known as phosphorus fixation. Fix the problem with Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Avail makes more P available to your roots, here, here, and here. Increasing P availability can lead to increased P uptake in the plant. That's more P, and more P. More phosphorus for your crop can mean more results in your bin. An average of 9.6 bushels per acre of corn. Breakfast is served. Supercharge your P with Avail.
Precision in grain moisture management can save you thousands in spoilage and elevator docks. The AgriDry Bullseye Controller monitors temperature and grain moisture and is available for all dryer makes and models. Plus, our AD-Link feature gives you 24/7 remote monitoring and allows you to control your dryer wherever you are. Call us today for more information.
Dry Load Store, 1-855 AgriDry.
A proven herbicide for decades, dicamba can provide burn-down residual control of tough and resistant weeds for up to 14 days. That's another reason why farmers will use dicamba for years to come. Brought to you by Roundup Ready Plus Weed Management Solutions.
What's the best strategy for taking non-crop acres and turning them into crop acres? We want to talk about that today.
All right, well, just before we get started, we were talking about CRP, prevent plant, possibly pastures getting converted to crop ground. Those are three totally different situations, and I think we should take each one of them one by one. Let's start with prevent plant. We've got fields that for one reason or another, mainly it's due to flooding or just excessive rainfall and poor drainage, they didn't get farmed last year. And now this year, we're hoping to be able to farm them again. I say this year, I mean this spring. We hope to get back out there and get farming them. We've got some considerations there, and there's really two big situations. One, nothing got planted in the field at all. And two, we got a cover crop out there. If we didn't get anything planted in the field, hopefully at least some weed control got done, but we don't have the concern about, do I have to kill off a cover crop? Is there anything that I have to deal with out there?
The cover crop's gonna die off by spring anyway. So either way, whether you had weeds or cover crop, it doesn't matter. The point is, if you had prevent plant, you need to get some tile out there. If you didn't get tile out there last fall, then chances are you're gonna be looking at the same exact situation if we get a bunch of rainfall again this spring. So what I would do is I'd start working on that right now and say, hey, for this year, I want to get this tiled one way or the other, even if it has to be in crop. Let's fix the whole problem, okay? That's the whole problem, is there's no tile in the ground, or there isn't tile at a close enough spacing, or we don't have a good enough lift station, something like that. That's the real problem there. In terms of the weeds and anything else, I'm not that worried about that. It's not that big a deal. Well, but just understand that what you could end up with is fallow syndrome this year.
Yes, that's what I'm concerned about. So let's just say that you kept that area black. You couldn't get anything planted, but you did get back out there and you tilled under the weeds and you kept that area black all year. Well, it's kind of good in one way. You didn't let weeds go to seed. But what happens now is, since you didn't have crops growing out there, you didn't have a home for all the soil microbes that are beneficial in your soil. One of them being Mycorrhiza Fungi. They're the fungus that help our plants bring phosphorus in. So they actually infect our plant's roots and they bring phosphorus into the plant. So what you can do if you've got those kind of areas, you really have to focus on your fertility program, but you need to do everything possible to try and bring back that microbial life. That's where that cover crop would have come into play. If you choose the right cover crop, something that can be a host for that type of fungi. The other thing will be using beneficial bacteria. Now there's a couple different ones that I really like on our farm if we have prevent plant, which we don't, but if we have an area of a field that gets flooded out or something like that, we would use Quick Roots on the seed and come back with Challenge 2050 in the furrow. Challenge 2050 is actually Mycorrhiza fungi. So you are putting the right balance and the right microbes back out in the soil to get to work for you 24/7.
The other big key here is making sure you have ample fertility. So we talked about the fallow syndrome already, but we end up with a lot of problems, a lot of tie-up, just because we don't have the good soil life because of that flooding, because we had reduced oxygen and we killed a bunch of our beneficial microbes. So I would almost over-fertilize compared to what you normally do, especially with phosphorus. That'll really help you on those prevent plant acres. And also, band your fertilizer. That will give you better uptake this coming year as opposed to broadcasting.
Okay, next situation, let's talk about CRP acres. There's a few concerns for me. One would be perennial weeds, 2 would be insects, and 3 would be what herbicides got used over the life of that CRP contract.
Well, that's really the same as pasture, though. I mean, CRP and pasture, I look at those as two similar things in that, hey, if you didn't kill the CRP or pasture in the fall, then you're already behind the 8 ball going into the spring, because chances are you're going to have that grass or whatever is out there for CRP sucking up water and nutrients that your next crop needs. So you've got to get that controlled as early in the spring as possible, and in order to do that, you're going to want to go with the highest labeled rate of glyphosate as early in the spring as you possibly can.
All right, well, let's talk crop selection. You know, a lot of times we'll look at using Roundup Ready soybeans rather than using corn going into those kind of situations for the simple reason that we can use very high rates of Roundup in crop if we need them. And if you've got perennials that somehow escape your tillage or your burn down application that you make, now at least you have an option where you can come in with a strong enough rate of Roundup to wipe them out.
Hey, I want to come back to, Darren mentioned carryover already. What products were used in the past? Tordon is the worst one by far. We figure 1 ounce is 1 year of carryover.
Well, that's a big problem, Brian. The other big problem can be that we can have grubs and other types of insects. If you are going to be planting corn, I strongly recommend not only would you use the traits appropriate for your area, but also put on a good insecticide in furrow to try to control any of those bugs. I know we see a lot of grubs, and all the insecticides you'd be putting in furrow are not perfect on grubs, but grubs can completely wipe a crop out. So you've got to do the best you can controlling them. Also, you're going to see some other things, seed corn beetles, seed corn maggots, those kind of things, and a number of other pests, wireworms as well.
Yeah, and the big thing is I would make sure I'm soil testing that, fertilize accordingly, and just keep in mind you're going to have a lot of nitrogen tie up there, especially in year 1. So if you're raising a crop like corn or wheat that needs nitrogen, I'd almost overdo it there to make sure you have enough.
Well, we talk a lot about the perennial weeds that could be problems in those situations. There's also annual weeds like our Weed of the Week. We'll show you how to stop this one coming up later in the show.
I wish I could side dress more than just nitrogen.
You can. While side dressing is efficient for nitrogen applications, you can also use that opportunity to apply PK and the micronutrients your crop needs. AgroLiquid's Calibrate and MicroLink products allow you to nutritionally balance your side dress application efficiently and economically. Let agriculture liquid fertilizer help you make your next crop a bumper crop. For more info, visit agroliquid.com.
A farmer's attention to detail is what makes the difference. You take the time for service management because you know how vital it is to your operation. You service your field like everything else because soil sampling makes all the difference and gets the results you want. Download the app Soil Test Pro and start grid sampling today. Keep your farm growing strong. The more you test, the more you know.
Looking to maximize yield? Quick Roots from Monsanto Bioag is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. Quick Roots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more, and is applied to the seed so the live microorganisms go right to work enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Get Quick Roots today.
For lower cost, higher production, Mandaco Agri leads with versatility unmatched. Twister is the vertical tillage unit for no-till as well as conventional tillage. Twister's ease of maintenance is forgiving in rocks and has contour conformity equaling 0 downtime. Our hydraulically adjusted coulter angles make residue management easier, less costly. Spring or fall, the Mandaco Twister vertical tillage unit is the new leader. See your Mandaco Agri dealer. Visit northcountrymarketing.biz or call.
Welcome to the 30-second tour of your local Poet plant. Local producers sell us tons of their grain. We grind it, mix it with water and special enzymes. The result is fermented, distilled, and dehydrated until it's 200 proof alcohol. Corn oil is extracted, and protein and nutrients are condensed, dried, and turned into animal feed, bringing our tour to an end with high-protein feed and cleaner-burning high-octane fuel. Visit poet.com to learn more.
One of the most important issues that we see all over the country in soybeans is iron deficiency chlorosis, or IDC.
Well, there are several things that will cause this appearance on plants, and what you'll see is interveinal chlorosis. So the veins on the leaves will still be dark colored, but the plant tissue in between those veins will turn yellow, and it could even turn brown if it's a severe enough case.
I gotta jump all over this thing here. There's one thing, it's called high pH. If your soil pH is above 7.3, you've got an issue, and you are very likely going to have iron deficiency chlorosis.
Well, also other things that have been shown to
make it worse are
things like high levels of nitrates, high levels of carbonates in soils, high levels of salts. Those things can all add to the problem. And just kind of like you were saying, Brian, there's one main stressor that gets it all going. It's we've got some kind of issue that's causing the pH to be high, typically drainage, and then all of a sudden these other factors come into play, and now you've already delivered that one punch. Now it's pretty easy to come in with the counter punch and hit it with additional stress factors that are really going to impact your yield.
Okay, so there are two strategies to this. One is people look at the short-term fix. I call it the Band-Aid approach. And especially if it's rented ground, hey, I get it. So first and most important thing is to pick the right varieties. Pick a good IDC number, and then you're in pretty decent shape. But also, I would consider adding more iron. They call this a disease. It's not a disease at all. It's just a fact that the plant doesn't get enough of the right form of iron inside it. It's because that soil pH is too high. But what you can do is you can supplement with more iron, put iron in furrow, green beans, soy greens, something like that, and that does make quite a difference.
The other things culturally that you can do is plant a higher population through those areas. You see, what happens with soybean roots is they're actually excreting organic acids, trying to bring nutrients back in and make those nutrients available, pulling them off soil colloids, etc. So if we're putting more plants in those acres, we'll typically see the beans not turn as yellow or even yellow at all, just because we have so many more acids going out there to negate the effect of that high pH.
When you talk about this yellowing, you can certainly go spray a foliar iron product, but what we found is, yes, it greens the plants up, and if all you're trying to do is make people impressed because your plants are green, great. But in terms of yield and payoff, it's usually not there. We've been talking so far about the Band-Aid approaches you can use. The last one I'll mention is elemental sulfur. Throw 50 or 100, maybe 150 pounds of elemental sulfur out per acre, and banded it would be much better than broadcast, but you can do it either way.
All right, so there's a lot of things. Brian calls them Band-Aids.
Whatever
the case may be. They're short-term things, and you know what? If you want to raise a successful crop this year, hey, those things are great, and you're going to have to do those. But what's the long-term fix?
The long-term fix is put some tile in the ground. You've got to fix the drainage. The reason why your pH is high in most cases is you have poor drainage. And a lot of people will say, well, I have tile lines out in my field. Yeah, and guess what? Where your tile lines are, your beans look a lot better, don't they? So you just don't have the tile lines close enough. We've got to get that soil pH lowered. And it's not going to happen instantaneously, but we've done it on our own farm, taken 8 pHs or low 8s and brought them down into the low 7s in a period of about 10 years. You can do the same thing. So if I owned the ground, there isn't even a question. I'd be getting a bunch more tile out there and I'd fix it.
Hey, let's talk about this too, because one of the things that happens in a lot of these lower depression areas is guys will put a tile inlet in, and it does remove those big rains. When you got a big pond out there, it's going to help remove that a little faster. We don't like tile inlets for a lot of reasons, mainly because they're going to move soil, chemical, fertilizer, all those things that are on the surface of the soil. They can move that right down that inlet. We don't like it for that reason. But the other one is it's leaving all this salt and nitrate and all those things that we don't want, the carbonates and so forth, in that soil, and they aren't getting properly drained. So instead of that inlet, put tile in, maybe it's every 10 or 15 feet just through those small little areas out in the field. It doesn't end up being that much money, and really it isn't that terrible much work, and it's a permanent fix, so you don't have to fight IDC every year.
Couple of last things. We now have a drill on our farm so we can change soybean varieties on the go as we plant. So we have one new field we picked up, don't have the soil pH fixed yet. We were able last year to change varieties on the go. That's great, because here's what it comes down to. If you can only pick from 2 or 3 soybean varieties that are good on IDC, your yields are going to stink compared to if you can pick from 50 different varieties that are racehorse numbers. That's awesome. That's what we want to do. So we really encourage you, fix the soil, and then you're going to have a lot higher yield in the long term. But in the short term, obviously, you're going to need the Band-Aid approach.
Well, also think about how much more money you're not going to have to spend on all these Band-Aids that we talked about, whether it's putting out those iron products or putting on elemental sulfur and so on and so forth.
Well, whether you have good drainage or not, you're still going to be facing weeds like our Weed of the Week. Can you identify this week's weed?
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
Farming isn't just in the land, it's in you. Take control of weeds like never before. Enlist builds on the Roundup Ready system, combining proven control of a new 2,4-D and glyphosate in Enlist Duo herbicide. Protect what matters without changing the way you farm. Talk to your seed or crop protection supplier today.
Our Weed of the Week is green foxtail.
Green foxtail is a pretty easy weed to identify, but there are some others that look fairly similar. When you think about green foxtail, I just think about that hairy ligule. That's the first thing that I'm going to be looking for, because the ligule is going to tell the difference between a lot of weeds. Now, when we're looking for that ligule, what you do is you take the leaf, and right where it hooks up to the stem, kind of pull the leaf out a little bit, and then you bend it, and in the light, you can look over that ligule. And when you just see a fringe of hairs, that's called a hairy ligule. Green foxtail is one that's got it. When you compare it to other plants out there, maybe it's crabgrass with a membranous ligule or barnyardgrass with no ligule. That's just the first qualifier for me when I'm looking at a weed. Then you look at the root system. Since green foxtail is an annual, it's not going to have rhizomes. So it's got this simple fibrous root system, and right there you can tell it apart from a weed like bromegrass, for example, where you've got all these rhizomes that are going to be running across below the surface of the soil.
A lot of people refer to green foxtail as pigeon grass, but they also call yellow foxtail and giant foxtail pigeon grass. That's very misleading and confusing. Green foxtail is probably the easiest foxtail for most herbicides to control, so we like to know when it actually is green foxtail. So let's talk about control real quick. It's easy in soybeans. Use Sonalan, Treflan, or Prowl down. Follow post-emerge with something like Arrow, Select Max, Fusilade, a number of different grass killers, and Roundup is great.
Yeah, Roundup and Liberty are very good too. When we look at grass control like green foxtail control and corn, these combination products that we're using a lot of are great for broadleaf control, but many times they have a cut rate of the grass herbicide. We like full rates of Harness, Surpass, Outlook, or Dual for best control of green foxtail pre.
Yeah, so his point is Triple Flex, Sure Start, Verdict, they all have lower rates of the Harness, Surpass, Outlook, Dual type product. We need more to get great green foxtail control. In wheat, we recommend starting pre-emerge with Prepare, follow post-emerge with Axial.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week's weed, but Iron Talk is coming up next.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
The AFS Connect Farm Management System from Case IH connects you, and only you, to the information you need most from your equipment, from anywhere, at any time. AFS Connect, only from Case IH.
I'll share one of the most popular tips from our soils clinics coming up on today's Iron Talk. Okay, I'll freely admit that this isn't a big piece of equipment, but a soil probe is worth a lot of money when used properly on your farm. So what are the big objections people have to taking their own soil samples? First, lack of knowledge. Many people just don't feel they have enough knowledge to pull good soil samples and read the results. Second, lack of time. Hey, you can easily pull grid soil samples on 1,000 acres per day or more. Plus, anyone who can run a four-wheeler or a pickup across your ground can do it. And third, lack of experience. Okay, the first thing we wanted to do at all our soils clinics is to have each and every attendee pull a soil sample and put it in a sample bag, just like you would if they were sending it to a lab. We also had everyone use the GPS on their phones to go to specific coordinates, just like they would pulling grid soil samples in their own fields. The big thing comes down to feeling comfortable pulling soil samples. Through our clinics, we hope to give the knowledge necessary to pull your own samples, the experience actually pulling those samples, and an idea how quickly it can be done when you get home. A good stainless steel probe is about a $100 investment. Find your spots in the field to take your sample. Pull 8 to 10 cores in that area, mix them together, and put about a quart of that mixture into a sample bag. There's not a whole lot more to it than that. A good soil sampling program on our farm guides the hundreds of thousands of dollars we invest in fertility each year. Taking our own samples gives us the confidence that we have good data to work from. Judging by our yield increases we've been able to make and the purity of the water coming out of our tile lines, the return on investment from a $100 soil probe has been a very good one for us. I'm confident it will be for you as well. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show. You probably thought about what expenses you need to cut on your farm this year. Why not start with the biggest expense, fertilizer? So how do you make your fertilizer decisions on your farm? Are you taking good soil tests? And can you read everything on your soil tests and make your own fertilizer recommendations? At an Ag PhD Soils Clinic, you'll go home with a simple strategy to reduce your costs on fertilizer and make better fertilizer investments. If you're a crop farmer and serious about improving yields and profit, you'll want to be at an Ag PhD Soils Clinic this winter. For all the details and to pre-register, go to agphd.com.
Morton Buildings. Great buildings built for the great outdoors. Contact us today to take advantage of discount pricing during our annual Building Value Day sale.
How will you secure your farm for the future? The Quasar Chopping Cornhead from Capello USA will help. Our design is focused on efficiency, longevity, and reducing harvest loss, making the Quasar the corn harvest solution to bring your farm forward. With hundreds of units ready for immediate delivery, secure your farm's future today. Do it for your farm. Do it for them. Order now. Capello USA. Italian craftsmanship, American grit.
I wish I could apply all the PK and micronutrients this crop needs at planting.
You can. When your soils are not excessively nutrient deficient, you can apply a whole season of PK and micronutrients when you plant and get top yields at harvest. AgroLiquid's exceptional nutrient compatibility and superior efficiency allows you to prescription apply everything your crop needs safely and conveniently. Research proves it. For more info, go to agroliquid.com.
My data is mine, not mined.
Mine to share,
Mine to keep. It's mine when I want it.
mine where I want it.
And only mine. My data is mine to analyze.
Mine to put to work.
Mine to control. It's mine.
The AFS Connect Farm Management System from Case IH connects you, and only you, to the information you need most from your equipment, from anywhere, at any time. AFS Connect, only from Case IH.
Wake up, breakfast is served. Your roots crave pee. Most of your applied pee gets tied up in the soil, a natural phenomenon known as phosphorus fixation. Fix the problem with Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Avail makes more pee available to your roots, here, here, and here. Increasing pee availability can lead to increased pee uptake in the plant. That's more pee, and more pee. More phosphorus for your crop can mean more results in your bin. An average of 9.6 bushels per acre of corn. Breakfast is served. Supercharge your pee with Avail.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
On your farm, you need speed and year-round effectiveness in your tillage program. The Quick Till from Norwood Sales allows you to move quickly through your fields, maximizing time and improving yield. Constructed of heavy-duty materials, the Quick Till is ideal for both spring and fall applications, from preparing a healthy seedbed early in the season to breaking up corn residue after harvest. For more information about how a Quick Till can improve fields on your farm, call Norwood Sales today.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but if you're looking for more agronomic information, we invite you to tune into the Rural Radio channel. That's Sirius XM Channel 80. Each weekday, you'll catch the Ag PhD radio show. It's a live show that we do every weekday, just talking about agronomic issues, and we invite your live phone calls as well.
And don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show, where we'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
Only 11.6 cents per dollar spent on food in America goes back to American farmers and agribusinesses. Where does the other 88.4% go, and what really raises food prices? Visit the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation at rnmf.org to find out.